The fat, drunk tourist staggered across the square, waving a greasy piece of fried chicken like a king convinced the world owed him entertainment. He laughed, shouted insults, and then did the unthinkable. Taking a big swig of beer, he sloshed it around in his mouth and, with a disgusting slurp, spat it right at the royal guard's face. The crowd froze in shock. But this time, things didn't go according to plan. The fat man could barely stay on his feet. His enormous belly wobbled with every unsteady step, and his flushed, alcohol-soaked face glowed with a smug grin. The stench of beer and sweat coming off him was unbearable, forcing people within several feet to back away, wrinkling their noses. In one greasy hand, he clutched a plastic cup with the remnants of warm beer, and in the other, a piece of fried chicken dripping with oil. The chicken was barely touched, but his entire outfit was already covered in greasy stains. "Hey, guardsman," he croaked, stumbling. "Hey, wooden soldier, wake up, will ya?" He staggered right up to the royal guard, who stood motionless like a statue, dutifully performing his role. The soldier's stone-like presence only fueled the tourist's arrogance. "What's the deal, huh? You think you're tough?" He leaned in so close he could have smelled the polished uniform, but instead, the world was hit with a fresh wave of his rancid breath. "Come on, man, let's make this fun." At that moment, the tourist's stomach rumbled. The fried chicken he had wolfed down earlier was clearly demanding a break, but he wasn't about to listen. The solution? More meat. He smirked, glanced at the guardsman, then he opened his mouth and yanked out the half-chewed piece of chicken, its greasy juices dripping down his fingers. Then, he held it out toward the guardsman's face. "Here, have some. You've been standing here all day. Bet you're starving." The crowd gasped. Someone started filming. Others whispered, "How disrespectful." The guardsman didn't flinch, but his fists clenched for just a moment. But the fat man wasn't done. "Come on, eat it. Why are you just standing there like a log?" he cackled, chewing obnoxiously and making loud, disgusting noises before leaning in even closer. "Admit it, you want some." He tried to shove the greasy chicken toward the guardsman's face. The soldier remained still, but his gaze was as cold as the London fog in November. "What's wrong? You owe me some entertainment. I came all this way just to see you guys. What are you? A statue?" And then, he did something that left the entire crowd speechless. Taking a big mouthful of beer, he swished it around, and without swallowing, spit the foul liquid straight toward the guardsman. The crowd erupted. People screamed. Some covered their mouths in horror, but it was too late. The guardsman, always stoic, who never flinched when people screamed in his face or waved hands in front of his eyes, suddenly took a sharp step forward. "Step back!" His voice was like a thunderclap, cold, commanding. The fat man stumbled backward, tripping over himself and splashing the rest of his beer all over his own shirt. "What? You kidding me? I'm a tourist. I was trying to feed you," he slurred, struggling to comprehend how the situation had turned against him. The guardsman slowly raised his bayonet-tipped rifle, fixing his unyielding gaze on the tourist's beady, bloodshot eyes. "Move! Back! Immediately!" The crowd erupted into cheers. Someone yelled, "That's what he gets!" Claps rang out, but the fat man wasn't ready to give up. "Oh, you think you're tough? You're just a puppet. I'll call the cops on you." But karma was already catching up. Pushing through the crowd, 2 British police officers approached, summoned by someone who had already called them. "What's going on here?" one of them asked, frowning at the tourist's beer-stained clothes, his wild expression, and the overwhelming stench radiating from him. Suddenly, the tourist realized that the whole time, people had been filming him. He tried to spin the situation in his favor. That piece of metal attacked me," he blurted, but the crowd already knew the truth. One officer exchanged glances with his partner. Attacked you? He raised an eyebrow. Interesting. How about we check the footage? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Oh boy, you're screwed. Someone chuckled. A couple of minutes later, the once arrogant king of tourists stood with his hands behind his back as officers snapped the handcuffs on him. Officers, come on! Guys, I was just having fun. Hey, do you know who I am? Yeah, we do, the officer replied dryly. You're the guy who's about to learn how British law works. The guardsman, as if nothing had happened, stepped back into position, standing tall and unshaken. The crowd exploded into applause. Someone shouted, "A real hero!" The guardsman didn't react, except for the slightest, barely noticeable adjustment of his hat. Business as usual. And the fat man? Well, he would be spending the rest of his trip explaining why his London vacation ended at the police station instead of a cozy pub with another round of greasy fried chicken.